Hello there, and welcome to today's edition of the Only Endometriosis podcast you need. Today's edition is a little bit of a reflection, so it's essentially the learnings that I've had from my own journey, as well as that of all the women I've helped over the years, but it's actually something, it's born from an exercise that I do with some of my clients, and I'm actually going to invite you to do the exercise at the end. So after you finish listening to this podcast, just set aside 10 minutes and actually do this exercise yourself, because it's a really, really powerful and impactful way of seeing exactly where you are with your periods, whether you have an endometriosis diagnosis or not, whether you're on the pill, whether you're just starting on your periods, or whether you are heading fastly, like myself, towards a menopause. Any point in between. It's a really, really interesting exercise to carry out. Similarly, just an aside as well, if you listen to this podcast and you know somebody else who's either at the beginning of their period journey or who's having trouble with their periods and you think this podcast edition might help, please do feel free to pass it on. I was asked a couple of years ago by a dad if I could do something that dads could use to have conversations with their daughters about periods. And apologies it's taken me so long to get round to it, but hopefully this podcast might fit the bill. So if you know somebody in that scenario as well, please do feel free to pass this episode on. So it's all about a journaling prompt, a reflection prompt, like I say, that I use with my clients. Quite often we do it at the beginning of a program and then revisit at the end. Sometimes we just do it in the middle of the middle of the program. Sometimes I do it just as a one-off exercise, just so I can gauge where that client is in terms of their connection with their periods, their feelings towards their periods. And the journal prompt is, if I could sit down with my teenage self, this is what I'd tell her about periods. So I would invite you, after this podcast, just to set aside 10 minutes and write a note to your teenage self, telling her all that you want to tell her about periods. And it's really, really interesting to see the messages that come out. And like I say, it's really interesting to see any shift. So I invite you to do it now, and I invite you to do it in a year's time and just see if that messaging has changed. Quite often, I would say 9 times out of 10, the messages that come out of that initial journaling prompt, the initial message to the teenage self, is one of negativity. And that is not surprising, because we are mirroring what it is that we've been told. So all the women I work with, and I acknowledge that this is not a snapshot of all women. I work with women who have problem periods. I work with women who have endometriosis, who have just struggled with their periods for years without diagnoses. But all of them routinely have been told that whatever they're experiencing is just part and parcel of periods. They haven't been told that by everybody. There have been some very supportive doctors. There have been some fabulous specialists. But all of the women, even the ones who found these wonderful humans who actually get what we're going through, have had to trawl through this is just normal, this is part and parcel of being a woman rhetoric before they've found the amazing specialists. So, part 1 of this podcast, a very, very brief recap about what a healthy menstrual cycle should look like. So, healthy cycle length. Typically, a healthy menstrual cycle is going to be between sort of 25 and 35 days. Some sort of variation within that timescale is completely normal. So I have worked with women who have regular to-the-day cycles. My cycle used to be exactly that. My cycle used to be 28 days. It then shifted to 29 days, then went back to 28 days. As I've hurtled towards my natural menopause, that has shifted significantly, and I'm having completely mad variations at the moment, but they're still typically within that healthy range. And actually, if you're heading towards perimenopause, so I've had some, or if you're in perimenopause, heading towards your menopause, I've had some months where my cycle has been 19 days as I've entered into that menopausal stage. That's healthy, but if you have any concerns about that, then please do speak to somebody. I'm going to talk a little bit about when to seek additional help in a second. But healthy cycle length, typically, if you're not perimenopausal, is between around 25 and 35 days. I also noticed when my periods were regular, that the right ovulation or ovulating from the right side produced a different period to ovulating from the left side as well. So some variation within that time frame is completely healthy. It doesn't matter if you're not completely regular. How should periods feel? Some discomfort is healthy. So I know that even when my periods are fabulous and they're at their absolute best, I'm still going to get a little bit of twinging around ovulation. It's one of the ways that I know when I'm ovulating. A little bit of pain is healthy, I'd say. Maybe not pain, but sort of in the run-up to the bleed, maybe day 1 or 2 of the bleed, then some element of discomfort, let's call it discomfort, some element of discomfort is natural, is healthy. What we don't want is pain. We don't want pain, especially extreme pain. That's a sign that something is wrong. Now, it's not necessarily a sign that something majorly is wrong, and I'll talk about all of this in a second, but it's a signal that you need to be looking a little bit more at what's going on with your menstrual cycle. Anything extreme, so extreme pain, extreme exhaustion, extreme fatigue, extreme bleeding, heavy bloating, anything like that is a sign that something is slightly awry. Like I say, not necessarily anything major. Signs of good menstrual cycle then, we want to see regular ovulation. So ovulation can be anywhere from sort of day 5 of your cycle right the way up to just before your period starts, essentially. So there's a big window where your ovulation can occur. Most women have, and it's a healthy cycle to have regular ovulation. So ovulating around about sort of within a day or 2 of the same day of your cycle every month. Any symptoms that you do get through your menstrual cycle, so any kind of fluttering, any bloating, anything at all, should be manageable. It shouldn't impact on your daily life. It should be stuff that you can either take a painkiller for or that you can use my natural methods and it alleviates fairly easily. And you should see relatively steady, not completely stable, but relatively steady emotional levels, energy levels right the way through your cycle. Your period is a really good way of judging your overall health. So I'm going to talk a little bit about when you need to seek help. First of all, I'm going to talk about mild symptoms. So, like I say, a healthy menstrual cycle, there shouldn't really be any symptoms in inverted commas. Like I say, you might feel a little bit of twinging, there might be a little bit of cramping, but it is just a fluttering. There shouldn't be anything major. Your blood should be bright and clear red, if that makes sense, like a clean red. There may be a little bit of slightly dark at the beginning, at the end. That's healthy, but the predominant blood colour should be a lovely bright red colour. There should be minimal clots in there. And everything should be pretty free flowing. If you're getting mild symptoms, then that is a signal that there is something up. Not necessarily, like I say, something sinister. So if you're getting even sort of more than slight cramping, if you're getting more than slight pain, if you're seeing mood swings, if you're seeing bloating, then chances are you've got something going on that's either a slight hormonal imbalance, a slight gut health imbalance, or you've got stress, anxiety, virus, something that's just disrupting your body's natural flow. So it's not necessarily that there's something up with your menstrual cycle. It's not necessarily there's something like endometriosis going on. Those mild symptoms, sort of mild to moderate symptoms, are manageable, and I'll talk through that in a second, but they are a signal that something's wrong. So it is worth just paying attention to your period and asking why these things are happening. Quite often, it's something as simple as dehydration or not moving enough, or diet choices. So I know if I have a month where I am lax with my water intake, so if I have a month where I'm especially dehydrated, if I have a month where I haven't moved a lot, if I have a month where my diet's been shoddy, especially in the run-up to my period, then I know that my period is, in Chinese medicine terms, going to be more stagnant. So the blood is going to be darker. Sometimes it can, if I've had a really bad month, it can actually be a bit brown in colour rather than that bright red. I can get bloating, I can get pain. There's not anything wrong. I'm not having an endometriosis flare-up. I've just got dehydration, stress, anxiety, whatever else it is that is going on. These aren't red flags. These are just simple indicators that your body needs something. Like I say, it could need more movement, it could need fresh air, it could need more moisture, it could need more fruit. Whatever it is that your body needs, your period is a way of your body telling you that it just needs to be a little bit more nurtured, it needs a little bit more something. The red flags that indicate that you need to be going to the doctor and asking for a little bit more attention. Severe pain that stops you from going to school or work. I've talked to and worked with so many women over the years whose pain levels cause them to pass out. They go to A&E and they're just sent away with painkillers and basically just fobbed off as, oh, it's just your periods. If your pain is stopping you from doing your day-to-day activities, then that's a red flag that there is something going on here. It could well be. So again, so many women that I've worked with, and this isn't to minimalise what anybody's going through, but so many women I've worked with who have this extreme level of pain, actually when we talk through pain management processes, there is still an underlying condition that needs attention, but their actual pain becomes a lot more manageable. Even if you're managing your pain, if it's at a level where it's impacting on you doing day-to-day things, please do see that as a red flag that needs additional attention. Similar with the bleeding, if you're changing your pad every 2 hours, if there's big clots, so a big clot is anything over about 20 pp size, or if there's a lot of smaller clots as well, that's an indication that there's potentially something going on. If you have cycles routinely shorter than 21 days or routinely longer than 40 days, again, that's a red flag that I would suggest you go and chat to your GP about. We all have cycles, so our cycles can be incredibly petulant, I was going to say. Not a good message. You'll see what I mean in a second. But quite often we can have, I noticed a lot during COVID, where women who had COVID and actually the COVID injection, they were having much shorter cycles for 1 or 2 cycles. So their cycles were maybe dipping down to 18, 19 days and then going back to normal after 1 or 2 cycles. So I would say if it's routinely shorter, so if you're having 3 or more consecutive cycles that are shorter than 21 days or longer than 40 days, then that can be a red flag. If you're having debilitating emotional pressures, if you're having PMS, if you're having depressive thoughts, PMDD, anything like that, massive mood swings, if you know that you are not to be trifled with at certain days of your cycle. Whereas, and actually we laugh about it and we joke about the emotion, the PMT kind of being, oh, I fly off the handle, but actually it can go the other way. If you have elements of your menstrual cycle where you don't want to talk to anybody, where you're just completely isolating yourself, where almost like the depression side of things, that again is a red flag. And periods that disappear for months, again, without explanation. Again, the number of women who say to me, oh, do you know what, I haven't had a period for 3 months and I know I should go to the doctor, but it's lovely. I don't need to think about it. Please do go and seek help. Just get a little bit more exploration in terms of what could be going on. If this sounds like you, if you have any of these debilitating symptoms, these more than mild or moderate symptoms, if you have been to the doctor but you've been fobbed off, then trust yourself. Trust that what is happening to your body is real, your symptoms are real, and you do deserve help, you do deserve answers. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what to say at the doctor as well. Because if this is you, and I completely get you might not want to go back to the doctor because it can be a trigger, it can become a traumatic experience if you're gaslit, if you're told that what you're experiencing is just normal, then it is, at best, it's demoralising, at worst it's triggering. But if you suspect something's wrong, you know your body better than anybody. If there's only one person in this world that can tell when your body is trying to give you a message that something's wrong, it's you. So if you suspect there's something wrong, please don't be afraid to go and seek help again and again and again if you need to. Check out the podcast I did, I can't remember when it was, maybe end of December, where I talked about why we are so reluctant to challenge doctors, because we are, and it's really, really common. There's a few things in there that I talk about in order to help, but just to give a few kind of brief things now. The best way to advocate for yourself when you go to the doctors is to be armed with as much information as you can. So keep a cycle diary. So track your symptoms, track your pain levels, track your moods, track your bloating, track your flow. There are so many apps out there, so many really, really good apps. If you have all of that data, if you can go into the doctor armed with the fact that you have 9 out of 10 pain on 3 days, these 3 days of your cycle, your ovulation's all over the place, your flow is brown and sludgy or clotty, your mood fluctuates. If you have that data, then it's undeniable. The doctor can't just fob you off them because you have the proof, you have your cycle trackers. I always say about 3 cycles worth of data, if you can. If you can, use scores out of 10 as well, because whilst everybody's pain threshold is different and somebody's 8 might be somebody else's 6, as long as you're consistently managing or monitoring, your pain levels or your bloating levels, whatever it is else, your anxiety levels, as long as you're consistent, you will be able to see how it fluctuates during your cycle. And it's something that's undeniable as well, because if you're saying you're a 9 out of 10 pain on days 15 to 29 of your period, that's undeniable that you're feeling that, you are actually actively monitoring it. So the more information you have on your cycle, the better armed and the more confident you are when it comes to talking to your doctor. Be prepared. So write down your main concerns. So write down the symptoms that you're most bothered about and write down why you're bothered about them as well. Quite often we are afraid to vocalise why it is that we're worried. So many women I talk to, especially on programs as well, and it tends to be sort of around the halfway mark that my clients kind of say to me, do you know what, I'm actually really worried about the impact on my fertility, or I'm really worried that there's actually something more sinister going on, but they've been unable to vocalise that right at the beginning. If you tune into what you're actually worried about and write it down, take that in with you when you go to the doctor. It shouldn't, but it makes it way more compelling for them if you talk about why you're worried about things. And don't be brushed off. Don't be afraid if the answer that comes back doesn't allay your worries. Don't be afraid to ask it again. If you feel as if you're not being listened to, please do ask for a second opinion. The NICE guidelines now state we are perfectly within our rights to either refuse to see a specific doctor when we're given the appointment, or you can request to see a specific doctor at the time. We are also more than within our rights to request a second opinion. You can also request to be referred through to a gynaecologist as well. So if you don't feel that your GP is giving you the answers you need, if you feel as if you do need more support, then you can request that they put you through for a gynecological appointment, and they should honour that. Also, don't be afraid to mention things like endometriosis or polycystic ovaries, fibroids, anything like that. I talk a lot about manifesting, and I talk a lot about be careful what energy you put out into the world. Just because you mention the fact you're worried it could be endo, or you're worried it could be adenomyosis or PMDD, doesn't mean that it is going to be. The fact that you're worrying about it is legitimate enough for you to ask your GP, to ask your consultant about it. If you can, find out a little bit about the conditions. Don't read too much on Dr. Google, because Dr. Google is terrifying. But find out as much as you can, actual information, not myths, not everybody scaremongering, but find out actual information about those conditions if you are worried about them. And then you can talk to your doctor about it while you're there as well. So that's what to do if you're getting any of these red flags. When you're getting the mild and minimal symptoms, there are stuff you can do there as well. I would say that, like I said just at the beginning of the podcast, these mild to moderate symptoms, I would say, are flags that you need to look at something else that's going on in your life. So it could be diet, it could be hydration levels, it could be stress levels, it could be movement. Again, the key to this is tracking. So I do have a free symptom tracker. If you don't already have it, I was going to say go to my website. I'm not certain it's on my website. I will try and rectify that by the time this podcast goes live. So if you go to my website, halcyonwomenshealth.com, and then go to I can't remember where it'll be. It'll either be under treatments for women, or it'll be under the bit that says free stuff and bundles. Be in there somewhere. Go to my free symptom tracker if you need a help with what you're tracking and how you're tracking. Otherwise, if you've got an app, that's perfectly fine. You might need to add your own bits and pieces to it. But track your cycle for at least 3 cycles, and that will tell you, or will show you, patterns that indicate what your triggers are, that will indicate what's going on, that you can start to avoid or to address. So if your cycles are being impacted by the fact you're dehydrated, you'll be able to see, because there's a column for how much water you've had, and if your symptoms are getting worse on the days or the weeks or the cycles where you're only drinking 2 glasses of water a day, then you can see that it's a dehydration issue. You can start to drink more water, and your symptoms may alleviate. So connection with your cycle is connection with your cycle is everything. Society teaches us that we see periods as a problem, that it's something to be hidden, that it's something to be embarrassed about, that we should be controlling them even, or even ignoring them. But it's not that. And when I talk about reconnecting to your periods, when I talk about how connected I am to my periods, that's not to say that I welcome with joy every single day of my menstrual cycle or every single day that I'm bleeding. When you reconnect to your cycle, it's about having a healthy relationship with your cycle, and a healthy relationship with anything involves positives and negatives. So I now have a healthy relationship with my period. I honour my period. I see it for the beautiful, life-giving essence of being a woman that it is. That's not to say that if it starts unexpectedly, I don't curse it. That's not to say that if I realise I've got a big presentation, or if I need to be doing something and I know that actually it's my introvert day. I say introvert day like I have one day. All of my life is introvert day. But if it's one of my major introvert days, then that's not to say that I don't have a flutter of anxiety or that I don't wish it was different. But that's the same with any relationship. Any healthy relationship has ups and downs and sticking points and triggers and arguments. But it also has elements of love and nurturing, respect and care. And that's the point that we want to get to with our cycles. We want to stop fighting it and start embracing it. We want to have that almost like that love-hate relationship, that healthy relationship where there's nurturing, respect and care, but there's also an element of frustration and annoyance as well. That's perfectly healthy. What we want to do is move away from this view of our cycles as being problematic and something that we need to control or even to get rid of. We fight cycles. We have done for years. We're taught to. We're given hormonal birth control that effectively stops our cycles. And the overwhelming, when I ask or invite my clients to do this journaling prompt, the overwhelming emotion tends to be, some cases it's hatred, which is really sad. Sometimes it's frustration. The best that seems to be is complete denial or ignoring, wishing it would go away. But they're not the enemy. It's a natural rhythm. It's a natural sense of being that can help us understand ourselves and understand our bodies so much more. It gives us understanding our menstrual cycles and how our menstrual cycles and our hormones impact on us, give us such a sense of power when it comes to understanding our emotions, our personalities even, that it's actually a really, really beautiful place to be, really. It's not that easy. I talk about it like it's really, really easy. It's taken me years to get to the point where I am tuned into my menstrual cycle. So if you're trying it and getting frustrated with it, please do keep with it, because it can take quite a while. It's not our natural state anymore. When you're having a healthy period, that's a sign that you are healthy, you're vibrant. It's a sign of your vitality. It's not a weakness. Having a period is not a weakness. It's a beautiful sign of strength. And like I say, once you understand your cycle, once you understand how it affects your creativity, your motivation levels, your mood, your anxiety levels, your energy levels, you can learn to work with it, and you can embrace your whole being. You can live your life in a way that actually makes more sense because you're not fighting something that's intrinsically you. When we start to try to control our periods, we're actually shifting the essence of ourselves. We're controlling the essence of ourselves. So if you can learn to embrace your period, like I say, this love-hate kind of relationship, this healthy respect, this healthy animosity sometimes, you can learn to embrace it rather than seeing it as an inconvenience. So track it, use your symptom trackers, understand it. One of the things I'd also say as well, obviously things like hydration, keep yourself as hydrated as possible, move as much as you can. It doesn't have to be going for 6-mile walks every day. If you can't get to go for a walk, then a gentle tummy massage for 10-15 minutes can just be as beneficial when it comes to keeping things moving, keeping things flowing through our abdomens. Our diets, when I talk about my programs, when I talk to prospective clients, I love chocolate, I love crisps, I love beer, I love wine. I don't have a restrictive diet at all, and that's not what life is about. If you understand how your body responds to certain things, then fair enough, you might want to cut things out once you're 100% certain that that's what's causing it. Nutrition is fuel, food is fuel. It's not supposed to be something that you use to, or something that is triggering for you, something that you use to as a stick to beat yourself around the head with. If you see food as fuel, if you try and minimise the processed food you're eating, if you try and eat seasonally, if you try and eat organically, if you try and eat 3 meals a day, or regularly anyway through the day, if you try and do all of those things in a really gentle way, then you will be giving your body everything it needs. As soon as you start restricting yourself, as soon as you start to see food as something that is, I don't know what the word is, but as soon as you start to have that negative connotation around food and diet, that's when things start to potentially become problematic. So simply seeing food as fuel, enjoying your food, getting what you need and what you want from food is essential. Keeping hydrated, keeping moving. Stress is a massive, massive impact on our hormone levels. So once you understand how stress reacts with your individual menstrual cycles, how your own stress levels are, you can start to manage and mitigate that as well. When we're talking about natural period products as well, I would urge you all, if you can, to step away from the mainstream stuff. Now, this has had such a shift in the last couple of years. It's really lovely to see. You can see period pants now, you can see menstrual cups available in supermarkets, and I would urge people, if you haven't, to try these sort of more natural approaches to period products. I always say, please, I'm just going to say, please don't use tampons. Please don't use tampons. Quite often in school or in various situations when we're given period products, we are given tampons, we're given disposable pads, and we never actually question whether they're any good for us or not. We assume because they're being made by people who we think are period experts that they are good for us. But my argument is that they're not. Tampons especially. Tampons absorb everything. I mean, the mainstream pads do exactly the same. So when you see these high absorbency pads, I'd urge you to stay away from them as well. So these kind of things that I'm going to talk about are not just tampons. The difference with tampons is tampons actually go inside you. So all of the stuff that's happening is happening inside you as well, which is even worse than just happening on your extremity, which is what that sounded weird, on your extremity, which is what the pads do. But tampons literally absorb everything. So they're not just absorbing your menstrual blood, they are absorbing all the moisture that's around it as well. So it's drying out your vaginal tissue, it's disrupting your natural pH balance down there. So quite often I work with women, and this is especially true in dehydrated women. That wasn't what I was going to say, but if you're dehydrated, this just adds to it as well. But quite often, as women move towards their menopause, this problem becomes even more pronounced. The first thing is to stay hydrated, but the second thing is if you're getting itchiness, if you're getting rashes, if you're getting almost like UTI, recurring UTI infections, then look at the period products that you're using, because quite often that's the problem. If you cut out all the high absorbency things, please do cut out tampons. But if you're cutting out all the high absorbency things, they also contain things like, some of them have fragrances to them. They have bleach to make them white. They have chemicals that you would never consider inserting into any orifice in just as the chemical form. But this is what our tampons and our pads are actually made out of. So please just be a bit mindful about the period products that you're using and how that might impact on yourself, because it's causing itchiness, it's causing rashes, and worse, it's upsetting our pH. And that can go, especially if you struggle with things like cervical erosion as well. Anything, adenomyosis, anything like that. Even gut health it can contribute to. So be more mindful of your period products that you're picking. If you're interested in finding out more, I did do a whole podcast on that as well. There's loads of information on the web, but essentially the more natural products are the better ones. So things like menstrual cups, these are completely in terms of ecological soundness, they are completely better than the disposable versions. You just buy one cup, they are reusable, they're a lot safer for your bodies. They don't absorb anything, they just hold the blood there, and you can actually wear them for up to 12 hours as well. I have endometriosis, I have heavy bleeding, and even I can leave my cup in for 12 hours without any major consequences. If you do need to, that might be a step too far for some people. If you do need to use pads, if you do need to use supplementary pads, which I do on occasion, then washable cloth pads are perfect. They have like poppers on, they're really secure, and they are really easy where you can have period underwear. My slight issue with period underwear is that you have to change your pants when you want to change your pad. So the washable cloth pads are fabulous because you can just change them as you would a normal pad, and you can wash them and reuse them. Free bleeding as well. That has to feel right for you, but that's the ultimate way of tuning into your body's natural ability to release without using products. Quite often as well, I'll say to people, only use products when you absolutely need to. So quite often we get really paranoid about the smell, about the staining of our periods, but actually a lot of us use period products for a day, 2, maybe even 3 days longer than we actually need to. The whiteness of the mainstream period pads make it look like it's a lot worse than it actually is. And what I'd say to you is, if you can, I invite you to try these different ways, to try almost like introducing a bit of free flow into your periods, so you know when you actually do need to use something, when you feel as if you do need to use something. And I'd also invite you to use the least absorbency thing that you can. So menstrual cups are fine because it just sits there and you just empty it. It doesn't matter how much you're bleeding that day. It's actually really connecting as well, because you can actually see how much you're bleeding during the day. But I'd invite you just to, if it's a step too far, all of this, and you're still determined to use the high street stuff, then use the least absorbent pads you can for that day. Don't go high absorbency, just use the least you think you can get away with. And like I say, if you're in a position where you can just experiment for a couple of days, just experiment with free flow, just to see exactly kind of how that feels and how that looks for you, and you'll get to understand when you need to use certain products and when you don't, because you don't need to use products all the way through your periods. So like I say, food and nutrition. If you are heavy bleeding, then food like lentils, organic red meat. I talk a lot about vibes, and I talk a lot about manifestation. If you can eat meat that has been reared in a healthier way, if you can eat it organically, if you can eat vegetables even that have been grown in a nice gentle way, then that's way better for you than mass-produced chemically enhanced food. Reduce processed food, sugar, caffeine, things like that. Especially if you have bad cramps, things like that, triggering for inflammation, but it also dehydrates you as well. Hydration, I cannot over exaggerate the importance of staying hydrated, and how much, if you are dehydrated, if you get yourself hydrated more often than you are dehydrated, you will see a massive improvement in your symptoms. Movement. I don't talk about exercise, as you know, so just get more movement into your day, even if that's just walking up and down stairs every half hour, going for a gentle walk, getting off the bus a stop earlier, gentle stretches. That can really help with cramps, that can help with bloating. Again, coupled with hydration, it's really, really powerful. And I spoke last time about self-care. Just give yourself gentle permission just to view self-care completely differently. Just be really, really gentle with yourself. Rest when you need to rest. Listen to the rhythms of your body and lean into those natural rhythms. Tracking your cycle. If you don't understand how your natural rhythms manifest for you, then tracking your cycle is absolutely crucial when it comes to that. Breathing exercise, journaling exercises, acupressure, acupuncture, go for Reiki, do Reiki meditations. There'll be some of those on my website soon as well. If you go to the bundles section, there'll be some really nice gentle meditations you can use for pain management, for relaxation, things like that. So, I hope this has been useful for you. Just to recap, your period isn't something that you need to fight. If you can work with it, if you can understand it, it will bring so much more joy and enrichment to your life. And I know somebody somewhere listening to this will have scoffed. There may be a few raised eyebrows. But if you do all of these things, your view of your period change and your symptoms will naturally alleviate, and that will leave you able to see any red flags that do exist where you do need that extra support. You do deserve to feel good in your body. You do deserve to embrace your periods and celebrate your periods, because they are something worth celebrating. None of us would be here if it wasn't for periods. They are something that we should be rejoicing about. And like I say, that's not to say you have to love every second of living with them. It's all about mutual healthy respect and nurture. If you're struggling, you're not alone. You don't have to go through this by yourself. Keep going back to the doctors if you want to. There's people like me out there who can help. There's free resources all over the place. You don't have to do this by yourself. There is help out there. And if you take one thing from this episode, please let it be that your body is not broken. Your periods are not something to fight, and you are not meant to suffer. If you do need any additional support, please do feel free to reach out. Please check out my website. Please check out other people out there, menstrual coaches, menstrual health therapists who can help. Please do connect to your cycle and connect to your womb. And like I say, just set aside 10 minutes just to do that journal prompt. Write a letter to the teenage you now with everything you want to say about your periods. Try all of the things that I've outlined in this podcast and revisit that letter and just see how things shift and how your overall well-being shifts in that period. Yes, didn't mean to say that, but anyway. I wish you all the best. Until next time, take good care.